Sharecare, helping you. Get younger, get guidance, get better care, get smart, get fit. Radio MD presents Sharecare Radio with Darria Long Gillespie, MD.
Hello. Happy Tuesday, everybody. This is Dr. Darria. You are listening to Sharecare Radio. Remember, if you miss anything we talk about today, go to radiomd.com/sharecare-radio or sharecare.com/radiomd. You can catch all of it. We're going to have an awesome show today, and we're going to start off with something that I know a lot of us have been wondering about. It's the recent World Health Organization announcement that processed meats, meaning bacon and hot dogs, may increase our risk of cancer. I've had a lot of people ask me about this. So to help us out, I've brought in our Sharecare's Chief Medical Officer, founder of the Real Age Test, Dr. Keith Roach, to answer all of our questions. Keith, thank you so much for joining us.
Daria, it's always a pleasure.
It is always a pleasure. So tell me, first of all, what were the announcements that the WHO made?
So the WHO said that processed meats probably increase the risk of cancer. They went so far as to use a really powerful word. They said that processed meats are carcinogens, cancer-causing chemicals, and they said that red meat is probably carcinogenic. Now, this isn't based on any new studies or new data. This is just a review that they've done of previously known studies that have been published in the last several years.
Okay, so they really just pulled together the results of all of these and came to these conclusions.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get to what everybody's wondering. So starting with processed meat. So are you, for one, what kind of foods are we talking about? Give us a few examples.
So this is any kind of meat that has been smoked or cured or in some other way processed. We're really talking about bacon and sausages and hot dogs and salamis and things like that.
Okay, and then does that include things like smoked fish and other smoked meats, or really just the smoked pork and beef?
They were really looking at processed red meats. That's beef and veal and pork.
Okay. All right. So what does this mean? Does this mean that eating bacon is going to cause cancer?
So the risk that the World Health Organization said is that it increases the risk by 17 or 18%, which sounds pretty significant. But if you put that into terms that might make a little bit easier to understand, about 55 people in 1,000 are going to develop colon cancer. And colon cancer is really the cancer that we're talking about here. If you eat almost no processed meat, then that risk drops from 55 to about 50 or so. And if you're in the highest group, people who eat the most amount of processed meats every day, that risk probably goes up to 60 or so. So there's really a difference of one person in 100 who will get colon cancer because of the processed meat intake compared with someone who eats almost none. So although that 17% number is a pretty high-sounding number, the absolute risk increase is only about 1%.
Okay. That's really helpful to know. It always is important to look at both relative risk of 17% and absolute. Like how many people are we actually talking about? So that's very helpful. Now, 2 points. So we're talking mainly about colorectal cancer or colon cancer?
That's right. They did take a look also at pancreatic cancer and prostate cancer, but the data there weren't enough for them to say that it increases that risk as well. So the interesting thing and the important thing about colon cancer is that there are ways that you can reduce your risk of both getting and of dying from colon cancer. Part of it has to do with other things that you can eat, particularly fresh fruits and vegetables. But also, there's a very effective screening test, the colonoscopy, that can dramatically reduce the risk of developing and dying from colon cancer. And unfortunately, not enough people are getting their colonoscopies.
So that's a great point to mention. Remind everyone when they should start getting their colonoscopy?
If you are at average risk, you don't have a family member who has had a colon cancer, then you should probably begin getting screened at about age 50 or so. And depending on what the results are, you get screened somewhere between every 3 and every 10 years until the age of about 70, maybe 75.
Okay. Now, that's always a good reminder for everybody. So also, people want to know how much there is an effective if you're eating bacon once a month or processed meats once a month, or if you're eating them every day. How much is on average that won't increase your risk too significantly?
Right. So the cutoff that they looked at in the study was 50 grams a day. Now, 50 grams is about 2 ounces, which is 2 slices of thick-cut bacon, which seems to be, from what I'm hearing, the processed meat that people have the strongest feelings about. Mm-hmm. So if you're eating 2 slices of bacon a day every day, that increases your risk moderately. Mm-hmm. If you're having 2 slices of bacon a week or a month, then that makes your additional risk due to the processed meat extremely small.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what are you telling your patients when they come in and say, can I keep eating my bacon and hot dogs and processed meats?
So I'm telling them that if they want to reduce the risk of cancer, which is a bit of a rhetorical question because everyone wants to reduce the risk of cancer,
yes.
They should plan on reducing the amount of processed meats that they're having to a reasonable level. And that means a couple of servings a week, I think, is an entirely reasonable amount. But I use this as a reminder to tell people that they do want to get the colonoscopies and they do want to have a generally healthy diet in other ways, loaded up with those fresh fruits and vegetables, which should be the mainstay of our diet.
And which would counteract also, like you mentioned, reduce the risk of colon cancer a significant amount as well, to be putting those healthy foods in our diets. Okay.
That's right.
Now, one of our listeners had said, she's a child who only likes to eat hot dogs. Is it something that, does she need to worry and minimize? What about when you're a child eating them on like a regular basis?
So the risk of developing cancer as a child is negligible, but it is important to develop good, healthy eating habits at an early age. Now, having had 3 children, I recognize that sometimes that just isn't possible until the kids have grown up a little bit. And so you just do the best you can.
Okay, good to know. So in moderation, like all things, especially when it comes to children and what gets them to eat as well. So jumping to red meat, you said it probably causes cancer. Tell us in the last minute or so what people need to know about that.
So the data for processed meat as causing health problems is pretty solid. The data for red meat aren't as good. And the World Health Organization said that the risk for cancer in particular for red meat was about half as important as it is with processed meat. So I think that the same rules apply. Eat red meat if you do in moderation. Have it be part of a generally healthy diet. It's something that you do on rare occasion. And here's one tip for your listeners, and that is that marinating meat beforehand and not allowing it to get charred as though on a barbecue can substantially reduce the number of carcinogenic chemicals that are produced in the cooking. So you can significantly reduce the harm that you might be doing to yourself with red meat by not cooking it to super high temperatures and by marinating it.
Now, I knew not charring it, but I did not know that marinating it helps. Why?
Marinating, particularly in wine, seems to be the most effective way of reducing the production of these chemicals during high heat.
Fascinating. Okay, so just marinate it for a couple hours in wine and some other good sauce?
Doesn't even need to be a couple hours. Just a little bit is good enough. As a chef, I find that usually around an hour or so tends to work best the way that I like it.
And it's cooking with wine, which is something that I like to do. So, Keith, thank you. Time flew by. This was very helpful for helping all of us know what we can be eating to stay healthy and not substantially increase our risk of any kind of cancer. Again, this is Dr. Darria. You're listening to Sharecare Radio on Radio MD. Download anything you've heard today at sharecare.com/Radio MD and follow us at Dr. Darria and at Sharecare Inc. on Twitter. Thanks for listening and stay well.